Money FM 89.3, the best of the afternoon update. Viewpoint.
Welcome to Viewpoint, where we break down the issues shaping Singapore today. I'm Lynlee. Now, car ownership in Singapore has never been cheap, but the latest COE results stunned many people. The premium for Category A cars has crossed $119,000, a new record high. Beyond the shock value, this raises a bigger question. What does it mean for younger Singaporeans and the dream of car ownership? Joining me is a familiar face, a familiar voice. He's on Money FM 89.3's Breakfast Show. He also co-hosts Friday Night Live with Neil Humphreys, and he's the host of the Gear Talks podcast. He's my colleague, Dan Koh.
Hey, good afternoon, Lynn. Thank you so much for having me here. It's been a long day for me because I was here since the morning, but I'm super happy to be on your show and featured on your show for the first time.
Yes, no, before we get into why you're here, how are you even alive at this time? You're on at 6 a.m. Or earlier than that to prepare, and back again on Friday nights, later this evening with Neil. Friday Night Live. And then you do podcasts. And hopefully, I hope you're still finding time for your girlfriend.
Oh, yes. It's a struggle for me, certainly. But you know what? If it's something that you're working for, if it's something that you're passionate working for, I think there would never, ever be a time where you would feel like it's bothersome. So I would say it gets tiring from time to time, but it certainly is quite blessed to be having these opportunities, come towards me.
Fair enough. Passion keeps you running, I suppose, and that passion extends to cars and bikes, which is why you're here today. So let's dive in. $119,000 for a Cat A COE. Now, you, to me, you actually own both a Ducati and a second-hand car. You're like a rare Pokemon.
Some might say poor financial decisions.
But this gives you a unique vantage point on what car and bike ownership means for younger Singaporeans today. So when you saw that number, 119,000, what went through your head?
Okay, Lynn, first things first. When I saw that digit, I had to rub my eyes. I had to take a second look, right? I thought it was for Category B because, most of us are used to seeing the 6-digit number on the Category B, given how, if you're buying a car that has more power. I guess it would make sense in the case of COE. So when I looked at it, I was like, oh, Cat A, crossing the 120,000 mark or close to the 120,000 mark. I was speechless, to be honest. And I could see why. Especially building up towards the car expo that's happening next weekend. And given how, Singapore has been pushing towards a greener future. So you see a lot of these other Chinese EV makers stepping into the market and just really hard selling a lot of their products out there. So I think to some people it comes as no surprise, but to reach about 119, sometimes it's still a little bit hard to digest.
It's insane, right? We've seen COEs rise before, but this one just feels very different.
It's staggering because the last time, if you think about it, about 5 to 6 years ago, we were looking at maybe about $50,000 to $60,000, and in less than a decade, we're seeing it rise exponentially, more than 100%, and it really makes one think, especially for people my age, would you ever be able to afford a car? When you have, rising housing prices as well, BTOs aren't exactly the cheapest for most of us.
That's right.
And on the other hand, we've got resale market, which is also considered it has a high barrier of entry for most people my age or within my generation. So I suppose I could speak for the masses. For the Gen Z, I think there might be some struggle, especially when it comes to transportation in Singapore.
Okay, so affordability is a big thing.
Yeah.
Do you and your friends even bother talking about buying new cars anymore? Is it more like a running joke now?
It is like a running joke, actually, because we're thinking oh, you know what? You have a car? Why? It used to be like a social status. Oh, wow, you got a car? Oh, wow, you're rich,
That's right.
But on the other hand, now, when I'm having these conversations with my friends, we'll be like, how much money are you burning? You can see how the narrative's changing. And rightfully so, given how, petrol prices are also expensive, parking is not cheap here, ERP is also rising. So I think there are a lot of factors that comes with owning a car in Singapore. And when it comes to, people, or Generation Z, there is often this lack of understanding towards owning a car.
Right.
After all, it doesn't make sense if you're going to have to save for your house first I grew up with this belief that you should usually, technically speaking, own a house first before you own your first car. Given how Singapore's transportation system is pretty good as of now. I mean, you see how we are pretty much interconnected. But I think for places where it's a little bit less accessible for the outskirts of Singapore, that might be a bit of an issue. But then again, the question is, how big is Singapore really?
With prices like that, it shows just how distant ownership feels for your generation.
Yeah.
But you're not just talking, you actually own both a Ducati and a car.
Yep.
That's very rare, as we were talking earlier. That's very rare for your generation. So how do you make it work?
Okay, good question. To be honest, I think, frankly speaking, it's a bit of a bad financial decision, as what some might consider. But I think, to me, it also feels a bit of like an achievement, like a milestone. I think it's hard to categorize bikes and cars within the same group. After all, bike COE do not go as high as, the hundreds of thousands of dollars. I mean, if you look at the recent COE prices, for bikes, it's about $9,000. We've gone up to above about 10 to, I believe, 12 even.
Okay.
So 9 seems reasonable in the face of $100,000, right?
Affordable, I suppose.
Exactly. Sadly so, right? But yeah, I mean, for bikes, especially since we don't really have to pay as much, having to pump the petrol, I feel like it's slightly more affordable. But in my case, because I own a slightly more luxury version of bikes, I think of it as more of like a milestone and achievement for myself, given how much I've worked over the past few years. And I like to think that, I plan my finances well enough to understand what I can afford and what I can't. Whereas for the car, to be honest, frankly speaking, I felt like it was a necessity. I mean, given that, I have a rather big family. I've got about, 5 people living in the same household.
Wow.
And, the issue of us traveling out is, I feel like it's because of my current standing, my social status, that I am privileged enough to say it as it is. But we would rather have a vehicle that can bring everyone around together.
Of course.
Without having to use time in exchange for money, right? So given that, my dad's growing old as well, and, and there's only so much time we have within a day. So
That's right.
I guess, sadly, I have to exchange money for time.
That's right.
And if it means having more time with my family, then gladly, I would just give up what I need to. Yeah.
There's always trade-offs, right?
Yeah.
So what are we really talking about? What sort of trade-offs are we really talking about? Skipping holidays, fewer date nights out, or that sort of thing?
Yeah. So, I mean, eating like tzu almost every day. No, I'm kidding. But, I mean, I guess, if you are able to understand what you need to sacrifice, I don't think that it's necessary for you to sacrifice holidays. Maybe you can go on a budget instead. And day by day, if you're able to, save on other means of expense. For example, I don't really drink coffee, right? So I think I save quite a fair bit within a month. And I try to make it a habit to cook a little bit more at home. So there are all of these extra stuff that I do. I come to realize that, if I start to cut a less amount of money, the money that I spend outside, and be in control of what I consume, be in control of what I indulge in, then I suppose this lifestyle would work for me. But then again, this is my lifestyle, and I wouldn't be able to say for most of the people out there.
Wait a minute. You don't drink coffee?
I don't.
How are you even vertical at the moment?
I know. But it's a struggle. I try to drink a little bit more water, so the frequent trips to the toilet would help me to, keep myself awake.
Okay, anyway, coming back to car ownership,
Yep.
you're really painting ownership as a series of compromises,
Yep.
not indulgence, which is a very, I suppose, different story from the old car dream.
Yeah.
So for your generation, do you think car ownership is still a life goal, or has it skipped behind other things like travel and housing?
Personally, I do feel that car ownership may have skipped this generation, at least for my generation, because I feel that, with housing getting a lot more expensive, we have to start prioritizing what is necessary. And do we really need a car in Singapore to get around? The short answer is really no, right? At the end of the day, we're paying for convenience. At the end of the day, we're paying for, time, right? And if we're able to compromise on these other stuff, then yes, we're lucky enough as it is. But, to other people, they have a lot of extra needs, immediate needs. They may need to spend a little bit more on, save a little bit more on, like housing, for example. If you're looking at the recent Category A COE price, $119,000, is that right?
That's right.
Yeah. So with that $119,000, you only own a certificate, right? You don't even own the car. You haven't paid for the taxes.
That's right.
You haven't paid for the road tax. You haven't paid for your petrol and all these other stuff that come into place.
Insurance.
Exactly. And those amount that you fork out would be easily used to pay as a form of down payment for your house. Easily, significantly, I would say. So I think to most of us out there, I mean, why would we bother to fork out that much amount of money and stress ourselves about whether we can afford a house in future, which is the very place we need to consider, because after all, it's the one thing that covers our heads, right? And helps us sleep better at night. So yeah, it's a tough one for most people my age, which is why I would say I settled for a second-hand car. So what I realized was that instead of having to absorb a lot of the depreciation that happens over the years,
Right.
I would very much rather get a car that is about to reach its expiration, and within the last 2 years, it seems slightly more reasonable to get that car, and perhaps consider by the time the car expires, what is my next step of approach. Yeah.
Okay. I have a very different viewpoint on that because,
That's fine.
because then you might risk having a lot of problems.
That
with
comes
the
with
car.
maintenance,
that's
that
right,
comes
yeah.
with all these extra issues that may not be informed. I myself was a victim of that. So that is the risk you're taking, but I guess it's a trade-off after all, right? So if you're willing to take the risk, there is a significant amount of money to be saved. But if not, then of course, you'll have to be willing to, bring out that cash to the table.
Okay. That sounds like the dream, as we were talking earlier, hasn't disappeared entirely. It's just
At the back seat,
slipped down
Yeah.
the list, I suppose. Housing, flexibility, and
Yeah.
travel probably seem to weigh heavier now. But, having said all that, look around. There's still plenty of new cars
Plenty.
on the road. Everyone's complaining about how
Yeah.
phenomenal the COE prices are. But we still see so many new cars on the road. Do you see this as more of a class divide now?
I do believe to a certain extent it does feel a bit like a divide, because after all, we see the slightly more wealthy, the affluent, the rich, I wouldn't say easily, but still able to afford these hike in prices. Whereas for the perhaps middle class to the lower classes, they may have or find some struggles, owning a car. And after all, at the end of the day, what is the purpose of a car? It's to bring us around, right? And if you have to rule out the different groups of people to be able to own a car, then there is that divide, isn't it? Right? And it says a lot about, the type of people that owns a car. And it puts you slightly above a pedestal, I would say. Unfortunately so. So I think there is that concern. And especially since, there are other people out there who may be using a car for their own living. Like, for example, driving as a part-time Grab driver. I'm not exactly sure. But, if they have to use the car because it's their only means of owning or earning an income, then the fact that they can't own a car to allow them to earn that income also restricts them from being able to, live a slightly stable lifestyle, I would say.
Yep.
And then for people with bigger families, people with families who may have disabilities, you can say that, the transportation system is great and all that. But really, if you would have, say, for example, a family member who might find it difficult to get around,
That's right.
Right?
That's
It
right.
might be another
It
concern.
really depends on, needs, I
Yeah.
suppose. To each his own, as we say.
Yes, to
Now,
each his own.
For you, Dan, I've always wanted to ask, because I see you with your Ducati,
Yeah.
flashy helmet.
Oh, thank you.
So what do your Ducati and your car now represent?
That is a good question. To me, I would say the car would represent as a means of bringing my family closer together, right? Whereas for the Ducati, it feels a little bit more selfish, right? It feels a bit more of a tangible form of my efforts, something that I would celebrate for the hard work that I've done.
Okay.
All right, granted that I have enough saved up and invested to weather me through the rainy days, but I would say I'm privileged and I'm lucky enough to have given the opportunity and, the time and place to even save up and to own these tangible
do you
products.
see
yeah.
the Ducati as part of your identity, perhaps?
Yes, I do actually. Yeah, I
okay.
think and I'm quite proud of that because honestly, when I go out with my friends and all, and sometimes they do, identify me as, oh yeah, he rides like a bike, he rides like a Ducati and all that. I mean, I don't like to think of it as my entire persona, but I like to think that people know me for being a biker. People know me for having this hobby, aside from just being a producer and presenter at Money FM, right? I think this says a lot about, my interests in life, and I think this is a great icebreaker for, when I'm meeting new people as well.
Yeah, and of course, whether it's a car, it's a bike, there's always this sense of freedom that comes with it.
Oh, yes.
Right? So has the freedom badge shifted, you think? Do bikes carry that meaning now for more people, more younger people, the way cars used to?
I don't
for
think
older
so.
generations?
Unfortunately, no, because there's this stigma that bikes are dangerous, and rightfully so. And I still do think that it's a lot more dangerous than cars. After all, it's your body that's hugging the machine. And if you get into an accident, unlike the car, which basically covers you with the metal, you're covering
right.
the metal, right?
Right.
So there is the risk that comes with it. And I do believe that these days, at least, it takes a specific group of people with specific interests to even consider owning a bike license. So I do think that it may have stagnated, for people who want to own a bike.
Okay.
And I don't think that cost goes very far to convince people that bike might be a better option.
I see.
Yeah.
Okay. So if COEs stay this high, how do you think your generation will adapt?
Don't buy a car. No, but I think that at the end of the day,
Use
public transportation, but I mean, with the recent MRT breakdowns, really.
Yeah.
So that's another headache, right? So I do believe that cars would, at least given that COE prices are expected to stay elevated for a prolonged period of time, I do think that for the foreseeable future, most of us would just keep it at a backseat. We would just stay there and just think about, having to meet our immediate needs first, owning a house, being able to provide for our family. And of course, these days, I feel like Gen Zs are all about that experience, right? Rather than having to own the product. We want to be able to say, when we're a lot older, look, I've been there and I've done that. So cars, I'm afraid that's got to wait.
Okay. So you don't think that your generation will ever feel the same pride or attachment to a car?
At least within a group of friends that I hang out with, we are willing to hold it off for a bit. And as much as it holds that social status, I think being able to survive is first in mind, right? And I do believe that, at least for me, if you're able to afford, then why not? But with valuations of cars just going up sky high, it's a bit hard.
So my sense is that a car is just convenience now, and pride and identity come from somewhere else.
Yeah, I think your successes in life. I mean, I think we tend to value these things a little bit more. After all, we don't really go about and be like, oh, what kind of car you drive? And like most of the times I'm meeting new friends and, people within my generation will be like, oh, what do you work at? What do you work as? And what have you done in life? Things like that. And we connect through experiences rather than these expensive tangible products.
Wow.
Yeah.
Which really reframes the car dream.
And that's why I think it's funny that you mentioned, because earlier today we talked a little bit about how the 5 C's, cars, condo, credit card, what's the other? Country club. And cash. These were the 5 C's to a Singapore's dream, right?
Yeah.
And I feel like that has changed over time. I think that a lot of people are prioritizing more on their immediate needs and, of course, what they can do to experience the best things that life can offer.
Dan, thanks so much for being candid. You've shown us this isn't just about record numbers on a COE chart. It's about culture, identity, and how younger Singaporeans are rethinking mobility.
Yeah.
Freedom, I suppose. Thank you. Dan Koh there.
Thanks a lot for having me.
You've been listening to Viewpoint. I'm Lynlee.
To listen to more great interviews, download our podcasts at audio.sg or download the audio app. That's AWEDIO, audio at the App Store and Google Play.